Imagine being torn from your world, your ship shattered, and waking up in a forest where fire-blooded dragon cubs cry for help. And the only thing standing between you and a furious beast the size of a mountain is the oath you swore beneath the light of moonwater. Danger, destiny, and a choice that could seal or shatter worlds. This is where our story begins. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us in the comments where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The transport ship moved through the dark sky, its engines whispering like tired hearts. Everything seemed normal until the vessel shuddered, as though the stars themselves pushed against it. Alarms flashed red across the panels, and warning lights washed the cabin in harsh glow. The portal drive, built for steady travel between worlds, shook and finally tore through a barrier not meant to be crossed. Mira Rowan, an engineer who spent her life fixing machines others gave up on, gripped the console. She felt her heart racing faster than the blinking alarms. She tried to keep calm, her training guiding her, but the sound of metal twisting around her was stronger than reason. The ship's voice spoke in its calm tone. Hull breach detected. Emergency landing in progress. The words chilled her. She braced herself as the vessel slammed into something solid. Silence followed the impact. Silence heavy enough to feel like a blanket pressed against her chest. When she opened her eyes, she did not see the inside of her ship anymore. Through the broken window, sunlight fell across leaves that glowed with colors she had never seen. Branches swayed gently, and the air carried the scent of earth and rain. She was not in space. She was not even in her own world anymore. Mira's body ached with pain. Her left shoulder throbbed, her legs stiff, and a thin stream of blood traced her forehead. Slowly, she pulled herself free from the wreckage. Every step hurt, but she forced herself forward. Nearby, she spotted the emergency kit thrown against a wall. She grabbed it, grateful for the small comfort of tools she knew well. She patched her wounds, her hands steady, even though her chest trembled with fear. As she worked, she noticed the air itself felt different here. It hummed softly, carrying energy that prickled against her skin. It was alive in a way she had never felt before. She listened. The forest sang with chirps, calls, and whispers. Not the hum of machines, but the voices of living creatures. Then she heard something else, a faint whimper. Soft, almost lost in the forest chorus. Curiosity pulled her forward. She followed the sound, past twisted metal and broken wings of her ship, until she found a small cave, formed by fallen rocks. Inside, she froze. Nestled in the shadows were three small creatures. They were no larger than house cats, yet their bodies were covered in shimmering scales. One gleamed silver blue, another deep green, and the smallest burned with an amber glow, as though fire lived under its skin. Delicate wings rested against their sides, and their eyes, wide and clear, followed her every movement. Her breath caught. These were no ordinary animals. They were young dragons. The amber one lay on its side, struggling. A deep cut across its ribs leaked golden blood that glowed faintly. Its breathing came shallow, uneven, and weak. The other two pressed against it, their small bodies trembling. Mira's instincts took over. She moved slowly, speaking softly, as if the creatures could understand. "Easy. I'm not here to hurt you." She showed her hands, then opened the emergency kit. The green one tilted its head, watching with cautious curiosity, while the silver-blue one gave a soft chirp that almost sounded encouraging. She cleaned the wound, careful not to cause more pain. The golden blood shimmered under her hands, strange yet beautiful. He wrapped the bandage around the little body with gentle care. The small dragon did not resist. It only let out a weak breath and then stilled, its glowing eyes half closing. "You'll be all right," she whispered, naming its spark in her heart for the light in its scales. The other two crept closer. They no longer trembled with fear. They watched her carefully, as though weighing her worth, and then nestled against her leg. She let out a shaky breath. She had not only found herself stranded on a strange world, she had found lives depending on her. As night fell, the forest changed. The bright calls of day gave way to deeper sounds. The safety of light faded, replaced by shadows. Mira gathered broken branches and scraps from her ship to build a small fire. The warmth pushed back the dark. The three little dragons curled close to her, their bodies warm and steady. But peace did not lag. The ground trembled, and a roar tore through the trees. It was deeper than thunder, older than storms. Branches shook, and shadows moved with power. A massive shape emerged from the forest. It was a dragon, larger than any building she had ever known. Its scales shimmered black, drinking in the firelight, and its eyes glowed like molten gold. Its wings stretched wide, casting long shadows across the clearing. The cubs pressed themselves close to Mira, their small bodies trembling again. Spark gave a soft chirp, as if calling out. The great dragon lowered its massive head, and its breath rumbled like the earth itself. Mira stood slowly. Fear clutched her chest, but she raised her hands, showing she meant no harm. The eyes of the great beast locked on her, full of grief and fury. In that moment, she knew the cubs were not only hers to protect. They were also the heart of the storm now circling her. The fall had brought her to this world. The firelings had bound her to it, and the night promised that nothing would ever be the same again. The night stretched long after the crash, painted with stars that shimmered like quiet fires. The forest whispered with sounds unfamiliar to Mira Rowan, and yet she felt the weight of the little dragons pressed against her side. Spark, the amber-scaled cub she had healed, breathed softly while Ripple and Moss curled close, their tiny bodies warm against her. The fire she had built with scraps from her ship glowed faintly, a fragile circle of light in the vast dark. But the calm broke suddenly. A roar thundered through the trees, deeper and harsher than the one before. The ground trembled beneath her feet. Branches cracked, and shadows shifted with the weight of something immense. Another dragon emerged, larger than the first, his scales glowing with the heat of molten coal. His eyes blazed with fury as they walked onto the human crouched beside the cubs. This was Kalor, Siloria's mate. His voice shook the night as he growled, the sound filled with rage and pain. He saw only a human, clutching his children, and his fury burned hotter than reason. The cubs whimpered, pressing closer to Mira, their small wings fluttering helplessly. Siloria, the great dragon who had appeared before, rumbled low in warning, but her mate would not listen. His chest swelled as if he would release a storm of fire. Mira's heart pounded, but she did not run. Instead, she rose slowly, Spark clutched carefully in her arms. "Stop," she called out, her voice trembling, but strong enough to cut the silence. "You're frightening your children." Her words struck deeper than she expected. Ripple and Moss stepped forward, planting themselves in front of her, their tiny eyes glowing with courage. Spark wriggled in her arms, letting out a faint chirp, as if adding his own plea. The sight of his cubs defending the stranger made Kalor pause, the fire in his throat dimming for a breath. It was in that moment that Orin Varder, the guardian who had first stepped from the shadows, revealed himself fully. He had watched with patience, but now his shape shimmered, unfolding into something both human and dragon. Wings of starlight spread behind him, scales shifting in colors of dusk and dawn. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of ancient rivers. "Stand down, Kalor," he commanded. "The human is under my care." The air itself trembled with his words. Kalor snarled but lowered his head, confusion and anger warring in his golden eyes. Celoria moved closer, brushing her nose against Spark's wound, her touch gentle and protective. She rumbled to her mate, a sound filled with memory and loss, reminding him that their cub had been saved, not harmed. The tension eased slowly, like a storm moving past the horizon. Kaelor's chest heaved, his fire cooling to smoke. He looked at Mira again, but this time his gaze carried shame along with suspicion. He did not speak, but he no longer moved to strike. Orin shifted back to his human form, his face calm, though his breathing was heavy. He glanced at Mira, his eyes steady. "At dawn, we travel," he said. "The cubs must be taken to Moonwater Valley. The elders must decide what comes next." Mira nodded, though fear still clung to her chest. She settled by the fire again. Holding Spark while Ripple and Moss nestled close, the dragons kept watch through the night, Celoria resting near the fire and Kaelor prowling the edge of the clearing. Orin stood silent, as if listening to voices beyond the reach of human ears. When dawn finally broke, the forest softened into gold. They set out together, a strange company bound by fragile trust. Celoria carried Spark carefully in the curve of her great forearm. Ripple and Moss darted close to Mira, their wings flashing like bits of sunlight. Kaelor walked at the rear, watchful and silent. Orin walked beside Mira, pointing out herbs and plants, explaining which healed and which harmed. The path led them to Moonwater Valley, a place where rivers shimmered silver beneath the light. Waterfalls fell like curtains, their spray glowing as if touched by magic. The valley held an air of peace, but also of expectation, as if it waited for something to be spoken. Orin turned to Mira. His voice was quiet, but serious. "Words carry power here. Before we move forward, you must make an oath. It will bind you in the eyes of the dragons." Mira looked at the cubs. Spark lifted his head weakly and blinked at her with trust. Ripple and Moss pressed close, their scales warm against her skin. She placed a hand over her chest, feeling her heartbeat steadying. "I promise to protect the small," she said. "I promise to mend what I can, to listen before I act, and to never take what is not freely given. I promise to be brave even when fear is loud." Celoria lowered her great head in approval. Kaelor hesitated, then did the same, his fire finally cooling to embers. Orin's eyes softened with quiet pride. The oath had been spoken, and the valley seemed to breathe with it. But far in the forest shadows, unseen eyes watched, and whispers carried on the wind. The storm that had torn the sky was not an accident, and though Mira did not yet know it, her journey was only beginning. The oath beneath Moonwater bound her to a destiny she could not yet see, one that would test her courage, her heart, and the fragile trust she had earned in this strange new world. The journey to the mountains took 2 long days, each step echoing with questions Mira Rowan could not silence. Celoria and Kaelor flew above in their scaled forms, watching the skies. Ripple and Moss clung close to her shoulders, their small wings brushing her hair, while Spark walked at her side, still healing but stronger with each hour. Orin Varder stayed near, speaking little, though every time she stumbled on the uneven path, his hand was there, steady and sure. As they entered the Valley of Crystal Paths, the land itself seemed alive. Mountains rose like blades of glass, their sides glowing with a soft inner light. Every step made the stones hum, as if welcoming or warning them. Rivers of clear water slid through the rocks, singing faintly, while strange trees with silver bark stood in silent rows. It was a place of beauty, but also of judgment, and Mira felt the weight of it on her shoulders. The entrance to the council chamber was carved into the mountain itself. A vast arch opened wide enough for dragons to pass without folding their wings. As they walked inside, the walls shimmered with moving colors. The crystals pulsed faintly, responding to the presence of the great dragons. Even the little ones drew soft ripples of light, their scales glowing in answer. When Mira stepped forward, the stone nearest her shifted into a hue like dawn mixed with steel, a color unfamiliar but not unfriendly. The chamber was larger than any hall Mira had ever seen. 7 seats, carved from single crystals, stood in a half-circle, each big enough for an entire house. Upon them sat the elder dragons, their eyes reflecting centuries of memory. At the center towered Elder Lyrian, known as the Mother of Echoes. Her scale shone like pearl touched by stormlight, and her gaze followed every breath in the room. "Approach," Lyrian commanded, her voice deep and steady, yet carrying through the chamber like thunder rolling across stone. Orin bowed low in dragon form, his wings spread wide in respect before returning to his human shape. He kept close to Mira as she walked, her knees steady, though her heart hammered inside her chest. Soloria laid Spark gently before the council, while Ripple and Moss circled near their sister. The first to speak was Elder Rivet, a bronze dragon with molten eyes. "A human stands in our most sacred hall. Guardian, explain this trespass." Orin's voice did not waver. "She saved the young. Without her, Spark would not be breathing. She risked herself when she could have fled." Elder Nira, her scales flashing in colors like rain clouds, let out a sharp hiss. "A single act of kindness does not erase the history of her kind. Humans have brought fire and greed before. Why should we trust again?" Mira stepped forward, though her throat felt tight. "I don't ask for trust," she said, her voice carrying across the hall. "I only ask you to judge me for what I have done, not for what others once did. I saw children in pain. I helped. I will keep helping, if I am able." Elder Clo, black as shadow and heavier than night, leaned forward. "Words are wind," he growled. "Truth is shown in action." At that moment, Spark moved. The little dragon pushed himself from Soloria's side and walked unsteadily toward the council. He sat, lifted his head, and released a sound unlike any cry they had heard. It was a memory song, clear and simple, carrying feelings no translation was needed for. He sang of pain, of fear, of the moment he thought his breath would end. He sang of hands, gentle and careful, of cloth pressed against a wound, of a voice steady even in fear. He sang of warmth and safety when the dark pressed close. His tiny voice filled the chamber, echoing against crystal, until the walls themselves seemed to hum with his truth. When his song faded, silence held the hall. Elder Lyrian lowered her head to meet Mira's eyes. "You carry grief of your own," she said softly. "Speak it, and let us see if sorrow has taught you or broken you." Mira felt her chest ache. The words came raw but clear. "My brother was with me when the ship fell. I could not save him. I failed him. But when I saw Spark dying, I could not turn away. I could not let it happen again." Lyrian's gaze softened. "You turned loss into mercy. That is a mark of strength." The council murmured among themselves. At last, Lyrian lifted her head high. "Mira Rowan, by witness of the young and the guardian, you are named Bridge Friend. You may walk our lands under protection, for your actions show a heart worthy of respect." Soloria rumbled with approval. Kalor, though slower, lowered his head in agreement. Ripple and Moss chirped with delight. Spark curled against Mira's foot, glowing faintly as though proud. Orin's expression shifted from guarded to something brighter, a quiet joy that lit his features. Yet the council was not finished. Elder Clo spoke again, his deep voice carrying warning. "The tear in the sky was not chance. An old engine stirs beneath the mountains. It hums louder each day. If left unchecked, it will split our realm apart." Orin's jaw tightened. "Then we must find it," he said. Lyrian nodded once. "The choice belongs to all of you. The path ahead is not safe, but if the door between worlds is to remain whole, Someone must calm its storm. As they left the chamber, the air outside felt sharper, heavy with what was to come. Orin walked beside Mira, his steps measured. "You were brave today," he told her. "Braver than many who call themselves warriors." Mira looked at the dragons, at Spark glowing with quiet light, and at the vast mountains still humming with secrets. "Bravery," she said softly, "feels a lot like fear you refuse to obey." The Council of Crystal Paths had given her a place among them, but also a burden. The storm was not over. It was only beginning. The Council had spoken, but their decision was not an end. It was a beginning. When Mira Rowan stepped out of the Chamber of Crystals, the mountains no longer looked like silent stone. They pulsed faintly, alive with warning. The Elder's words echoed in her mind. An old engine stirs. One that could split the realms apart. Orin Varder walked beside her, his steps steady, his eyes scanning the sky. Soloria and Kalor moved with their wings folded, their scales glinting in the early light. Ripple and Moss darted ahead, chirping softly, while Spark stayed close to Mira's side, his amber glow steady now that he was healed. They did not walk far before they came to a narrow canyon, where the air thrummed like the low hum of a vast machine. Rocks cracked faintly underfoot, as though something beneath them pushed to break free. Orin paused, his jaw tight. "This is where it began," he said. "Long before my guardianship, a human crossed here, not with a ship, but with a machine built to open what should never be opened." Mira listened, her heart steady. "A machine that makes doors," she whispered. Orin nodded. "The maker of doors." His craft was clever but reckless. He built pathways between realms, careless of the cost. The first breach tore through this valley. And though the elders sealed it, the engine still breathes. Now it stirs again. They moved deeper into the canyon, and soon the stone gave way to glassy shards of crystal fused by heat long past. In the center stood ruins, arches of blackened metal, rising like broken ribs from the earth. The sound of the engine beat through the air, slow and steady, like the echo of a heart too large to belong to flesh. As they approached, Ripple and Moss pressed close to Mira, uneasy. Spark gave a soft hiss, his wings trembling. Soloria's great eyes narrowed. "It remembers," she rumbled, "and it's calling to her." Mira froze. The hum grew stronger when she stepped forward, softer when she moved back. The machine was reaching for her, recognizing something in her blood, in her presence. "Why me?" she asked quietly. Orin's gaze did not leave the ruins. "Because you crossed by accident, but not without reason. The storm of magic found you. Perhaps it chose you." The thought chilled her, yet also gave her strength. She had survived the fall, healed Spark, faced Kalor's fury, and spoken before the council. Now, this machine waited for her to decide its fate. "What happens if it breaks free?" she asked. Kalor's voice was grim. "The sky will shatter. Realms will bleed into one another. None will survive unchanged." Mira placed a hand against the twisted arch. It burned cold, not hot, as though fire had turned inward. Visions flashed, shadows of worlds colliding, oceans spilling into deserts, mountains collapsing into endless skies. She pulled her hand back, breath shaking. "Then we stop it," she said. Orin stepped closer, his hand brushing hers, grounding her. Not with steel, but with choice. The maker of doors built it to obey a voice bound by oath. You spoke such an oath in Moonwater Valley. Now it listens to you. Mira closed her eyes, remembering her promise. To protect the small, to mend what she could, to listen before she acted, to be brave even when fear was loud. The words rose again, steady and clear. The engine shuddered. Light burst from the arches, spilling in streams of silver and gold. The air trembled, but did not break. The great machine seemed to sigh. folding into silence as if her oath had sealed it shut. When she opened her eyes, the glow had faded. The ruins stood quiet. No hum, no beat, only the sound of wind moving gently through the canyon. Celoria lowered her head in reverence. The storm has ended. The breach is quiet once more. Kalor looked at Mira, his expression heavy with respect. You closed what none of us could. Orin studied her, his eyes reflecting both wonder and certainty. Because it was never only about doors. It was about who chooses to walk through them and who chooses to guard them shut. The dragons bowed their great heads, not in command, but in recognition. Ripple and Moss leapt into her arms, chirping with joy. Spark pressed against her side. Blowing faintly in triumph, Mira looked at the ruins one last time. She thought of her lost brother, of the life she had left behind, and of the strange destiny she had found here. The path ahead was uncertain, but she no longer feared it. She was not only a survivor of a crash, she was a keeper of oaths, a bridge between worlds, and perhaps something more. Orin's voice was quiet, almost reverent. You are not just a traveler now. You are the Guardian's equal. As the sun set across the crystal peaks, Mira walked with her new companions toward the horizon. The Maker of Doors was gone, its echoes sealed. But her own story, bound now to dragons and to destiny, was only beginning. And somewhere deep within the canyon, a faint spark lingered, not of threat, but of possibility. Doors had been closed, but others waited to be opened, when the time was right and when the heart was ready.